Thank you so much.
We always begin each Q&A session asking if there are any Pellegrinos, anyone who's done the Camino, to please stand so that we can celebrate you. Buen Camino! And stay up for just a second. Was it what you expected? Were you surprised? Were you, what? Just give us a shout out that it was part of your experience and you remembered it, or no?
Magnificent!
Buen camino. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
You want me to call on people? You just want to call on people.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't know this, you were all part of our American pilgrimage. We began 3 weeks ago in California, and this is our 13th or 14th stop along the way. The first university we stopped at, and certainly the most important. So thank you for being a part of our U.S. pilgrimage. We've got another 4 weeks on the road, and so far we're not at each other's throats. We are traveling by bus, which you may have seen yesterday out in the parking lot. We were tailgating. Thank you for the great placement.
Could we, before we go any further, thank our hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Nanovic. I had the honor of sitting at their table for breakfast this morning, and I may have spoiled it with some disparaging remarks about Bush the Younger. Nothing personal. We're so grateful to you. Such a wonderful host and such great sports. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Now, right here.
So we have a tradition here, which is to call on a student first. Do we have any bold students? No bold student? I did see a hand there.
Bernie. Okay. All right. First, I'd like to thank Professor McAdams and Anovics, and you two, of course, bringing this film here. It really is the sort of thing that fits here, and so thank you for that. You say, okay, you both have been in the biz for a little while. Do you think there's any?
Oh.
Well, I'm just wondering if you think there are any others out there in the biz, either Catholic or Christian or whatever, who would, sort of feel the impulse to make these sorts of films. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's a drama, but it's a little different than some of the dramas been out lately. It's not an action flick. It's not any of that. It's not preachy, but it is deeper. So, just speaking from the circle.
We're going to take you on tour with us. Magnificent interpretation of this film, and a deeply personal one. We're very grateful to you. I think Emilio can.
Well, unfortunately, Hollywood makes a lot of crap. And we know firsthand because we've been in some of it. So, with a film like this, it was not an easy sell. You sort of pitch the idea to agents or people connected to the studios, and you just see their eyes glaze over. 4 people walking across Spain, and where's the CGI? There's no bad language in this. There's no teenagers in this. There's no, right? So it was an uphill battle. We decided to just go and do it. We went to Spain. We dug in. We found a Spanish partner. We had a ton of heart. And I think that's not only reflected in the film, but it was also this infectious thing that took off once we got in country. We were, my father and I are both Gallegos. Our Spanish partner was also from the north of Spain, from Galicia. They were Gallegos, so there was a kindred spirit there. We hope that a movie like this sends Hollywood a message. And what we've learned during this cross-country tour is that the middle of the country, what Hollywood likes to call the flyover states, we call them the United States. And there is a hunger, there is a desire for movies like this. And it's up to you guys to vote with your feet, with your wallets, and say, yes, we support a movie like this, and please make more. That is the only way they get the message. Movies like The Help or films like The King's Speech, there are more coming out of Hollywood, but not enough. Movies that are made for sentient, thinking human beings, like all of you here.
Let's have another student. Bernie was the brave one, so who's going to be?
Bernie the Brave.
Yeah, sure.
Emilio, what's it like making the transition from acting to going behind the camera and directing?
I like the shirt. Where did you get that? That's one of the original shirts.
That's worth something.
You know, I've always considered myself a storyteller. I started writing at a very, very young age. In fact, at age 7, I wrote my first story and submitted it to Universal Studios. It was written in pencil on notebook paper. They immediately sent it back with a rejection slip and said, thank you very much. So I've been in the business of rejection since I was 7 years old. But I've always considered myself a storyteller. When I was around 10 or 11, my folks had purchased an 8mm Super 8 camera for us to document, for them actually, to document the 4 of us growing up. Charlie and I took that camera and said, no, we're going to make film, we're going to make our own movies with this. And so we shot those in the backyard and created our own stories. So what I'm doing now as a director, as a writer, feels like a very organic extension of what I started 40 years ago.
I have to remark to you, please stand up, because you did the whole Camino on a bicycle. We talked this morning at breakfast, didn't you?
With some of my other companions here too, though.
Oh, I was looking at the lady behind you, sorry. No, she started from Burgos. You did it from Burgos. Did you recognize the city?
I walked.
You walked from Burgos all the way, good. Why was I calling you out? Because I promised that I would do that. I'm stuck for that, sorry. But I hope that you had a reminiscent journey on your pilgrimage.
Oh, yeah, a lot of the scenes I can remember walking them. Actually, could I ask you a question? Because I did have one.
Yeah, please.
What, I guess, was your favorite stop on the Camino?
Of all, the cathedral. Walking into the Port of Glory, because...
In Burgos?
No, in Santiago,
Santiago.
because we were denied permission until 48 hours before we got there.
Oh.
Yeah, the Archbishop, they just wouldn't let us go near it. They had never allowed a film company in there to film, only newsreels and documentaries. So it was, all along the Camino, we were lighting candles and novenas. I'm not joking. Okay, he had us going, man. He said, we've got to get in the cathedral because otherwise there's no ending. And right up till we got there, Emilio had written an ending that we get there at night and it's closed. And he said, that'll do it. And he said, wait a minute, what about the next morning? These are people that sleep out in the wilderness and refugios and so forth. What happens in the morning? You know, the church is going to be open then. Now what? But we did have a miraculous, the whole community was filled with miracles for us, and that was the final one, is that they gave us permission. We only understood later why, because we were, although we were connected, my father was a Gallego and so forth, grew up about 80 miles from Santiago, we were still outsiders. We were Americans. We had the Hollywood kind of syndrome going for us. So they didn't know if we would respect the sacredness of this journey, and they were very, very reluctant. It was only when we premiered the film about 3 blocks in the theater from the cathedral. We sat next to the Archbishop and the President of Galicia. And at the end of the film, they stood up and roared. And we only learned then how relieved they were that we didn't denigrate. And we got it right. And the Archbishop said to Emilio, thank you for this love letter. For the community. So it was very, very thin. But I want to just go back to the beginning just a little bit. Because speaking of kids, I was trying to make the journey in '03 between seasons of The West Wing. I had ill-prepared myself. I didn't even have a guide map, I didn't have a backpack. I had 2 weeks to do it. And I was with my grandson, Taylor, his son, and my old friend, Matt Clark, who's in the film. He plays the rabbi/priest. Gives me the rosary, okay? So the 3 of us are in Spain trying to figure this out in my sister's apartment. And she convinced us that we should just rent a car and drive the Camino for future reference. And so we did that. We got to Burgos, and we stayed at the El Molino, which is a Casa Rural out in the country, about 20 kilometers from Burgos. And we were at the Pilgrim Supper that night, and the family was serving us milagras and what's it, her father, Maximiliano, and their daughter Julia came in to help serve. Julia looked at Taylor, Taylor looked at Julia. They've been looking at each other ever since. They're married, and they live in Burgos. So that was the beginning, the first miracle of the Camino. I thought I'd throw that in. You who at breakfast this morning know that story. I'm sorry, you were talking about your children. You all did the Camino.
No, my wife and a friend of ours here.
Oh, all right, good. And the little ones have not done it.
Not yet.
Why not?
As soon as they can walk it.
All right.
They will.
But you did it on the bike.
Right.
All right, good. I hope you didn't feel embarrassed that we kind of denigrated the bike or on horseback.
It was one of the best lines of the film.
But yeah, for me, the best moment was at the Portugal Inn, coming in the cathedral. And Emilio gave all of us a choice of what to do if we were really these people and really in this circumstance. And I chose to go to the crypt. The young lady went to find the Holy Mother, some statue of the Holy Mother, so she could renew her healing on her journey. The Irishman decided to surrender to the transformance that was going on inside him, the transcendence. And the Dutchman, the very last person you would expect of it, fell to his knees. And for all of us, he says, thank you and praise. So that we kind of covered the whole bag. And it's a deeply personal ending for all of us. And I hope you cried your eyes out. We're not afraid to be sentimental there.
Yes.
I was wondering, I saw at the beginning of the film that this is at least loosely based on a different book by Jack Hitt. Is that
Right.
the author's
Right.
name? How much is it faithful to the book, and what did you add or take out in the film?
Right.
I'm specifically interested in the writer. I was wondering if that was kind of a deliberate,
Yes.
how do we handle Hollywood handling,
Right.
you know, something as sacred as this, and so you put a writer in, and then there's
Right.
that whole theme of how he's handling or mishandling this experience. So
Well, I stumbled upon Jack Hitt's book, which is called Off the Road. He wrote it, it was published some 10 years ago. I had deliberately stayed away from Shirley MacLaine's experience, her book, Paulo Coelho's The Pilgrimage. I didn't want to be influenced by other writers. What I was looking for specifically were guidebooks. It was just sort of the facts. And I reached a bit of writer's block myself and bumped into the Jack Hitt book and reluctantly read it. And I was really looking for the fourth voice. I had created the character of Tom, the Dutchman and the Canadian gal, but I didn't have my scarecrow. And I read Jack's book and reached out to him and I said, how do you feel about the idea of taking your character, your pilgrimage, and inserting you into this story? And how about the idea that you are this drunk Irishman who is suffering from a bout of writer's block? And there was a long pause, and Jack Hitt said, I'm so insulted. He says, I'm Scottish. So there were a few stories in the book that I thought were hysterical. The El Ramon scene I thought was something that we...
Had any of you ever heard of El Ramon? He was a true character. He's dead now, God rest him, but he was infamous as well as equally famous. He didn't charge anyone, but he drove them nuts.
So that actually happened to Jack Hitt out on the road, on his own, which, anyway, so, and then the voice of Jack, I really felt that there was, we needed a cynic, we needed a non-believer, we needed somebody out there to have issue with the church, and come to some realization at the end that it's really about the interior journey. But the rest of it was right out of this twisted noggin.
Comment or question, what was it like directing your father, and what kind of bond did you form in that part of an ensemble as you made this journey? I mean, because it was a personal journey, but then there was also the kinship you had to form in making this film.
Did everyone hear the question? What kid doesn't want to tell their parents what to do? So, but in all seriousness, I live right down the street from this man and my mother. They're together now 50 years. I consider them my best friends. I'm literally 200 yards down the street from them. So we see each other every day, for better or worse. The actual filming, of course, we were together every day, but again, that sort of felt like an extension of home. We just had cameras and we were in Spain, and it felt very natural. I think it's the best performance that my father's given since Apocalypse Now.
I was sober.
Years ago, the great legendary director John Huston was once asked who his favorite actor was to work with. And he said, well, that would be my father, Walter Huston. And the journalist said, well, why? And Huston said, because he never tried to sell you anything. He was an honest man. And because of that, he gave a truly honest performance. Walter went on to win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Treasure of Sierra Madre. Maybe the best performance he ever gave was the performance that his son directed him in. So I like to say the same thing. He's my favorite actor.
Somebody had their hand up, yeah.
Beautifully written film, and the rest of it rises to the level of the writing. And you've mentioned influences and what you'd read before, and your dad mentioned having to adjust things because of the time of day that you arrived at the cathedral and so forth. And I'm wondering how much or to what extent the Camino itself impacted the writing and maybe made you change things or add things or adjust things.
The Camino itself, I mean, the very nature of being out there is additive. You cannot point a camera in any direction without photographing something extraordinary, something beautiful. The advantage we had is we were shooting in sequence. We started on September 21st in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and shot in sequence, and 40 days later we arrived in Santiago. In shooting in sequence, we have the advantage of everything that happens informs where we go. Not only the weather, but also the development of the characters. We didn't change a whole lot, screenplay-wise. What we did allow for were the miracles to happen, and there were many. A train would pull into the shot, and 20 pilgrims would get off. And they'd sort of look around, they'd see us with the cameras, and my assistant director would be losing his mind, pulling his hair out, saying, this is a disaster. And I was saying, no, this is a gift. And now we have 20 people we couldn't afford. So, and all the pilgrims that you see throughout the film, the ones that have the speaking roles were obviously actors, but the others are all real pilgrims. And we were very cautious not to impede or influence their pilgrimage. If they didn't want to be a part of it, we didn't want to get in their way. And we turned the cameras away if they were uncomfortable with it, but I would say 99% of them wanted to be a part of it. And now we're getting feedback on Facebook and through our emails saying, did that scene, I was in that scene, is that scene still in the movie? And so it's all been very, very positive.
Yes, we have a question right here.
Yes. A person from St. Adalbert Parish from South Bend. We have a little over 2,000 members, primarily immigrant. Our past pastor, Father Chris Cox, walked the actual Camino last year in 2010. And not only did he take our petitions with him for the hope of an immigration reform, but he also walked with his father, so this was very, very touching.
Wow. Did you all hear that? What is your name?
Jesus Rivera.
Jesus Olivera. Is it St. Joseph Parish?
St. Adalbert Parish.
St. Adalbert Parish here in South Bend. You are mostly immigrants in the parish, and your parish priest led a delegation from the parish.
Actually, he just walked with his dad.
He walked with his father,
taking our petitions with
taking the petitions for the immigrants and for immigration reform in the United States, yes. Took it all the way to Compostela.
Yes.
And laid it at the tomb of himself, yes.
But walked with his dad.
He walked with his father. That's great. Great.
So
Did he hug the mighty saint?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
That's a tradition for those of you who don't know. On the main altar is a huge statue of Santiago, And it's a tradition for pilgrims. They come up a very thin staircase and they hug the mighty saint and give him a kiss and then go on the other way. And we actually filmed that, but it's not in the movie because it just was...
It's in the 4-hour version.
It's in the 4 hours.
So the question is, when will it appear in Chile?
When will it appear in
Yes.
Chile?
Yes,
We
because
don't-
he is
we-
now in Chile.
Oh, he is?
Yes.
We don't have any idea about a South American distribution.
No.
It's in Europe, it's doing very well. It's still an amazing hit in Ireland. Irish are the second largest number of pilgrims on the Camino, next to the Spanish. And so we're focused now on the United States. And if it does well here, we know that it'll go south. Yeah, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. Thank you so much. Let's all pray for immigration reform.
I have a little bit of a two-part question. The Irish of Notre Dame have always loved you. And
Me?
it appears, yes, and it appears that the Irish in Ireland love you as well. Recently, you were asked to run for president of Ireland, and you decided not to. Tell us quickly about that. And the second part is, we have 132,000 living alumni of Notre Dame. They should all see this film. What do we tell them, and how do we get them to this film?
All right, I'll let Emilio answer the second part. The first part you're asking about, okay, did you all hear the question? All right, evidently there's some interest in my running for president of Ireland, which came up just a few weeks ago. And I thought it was a joke, and I didn't pay any attention to it, and it began to roll along. And it was motivated by a group of young people in Ireland, and I guess there were a couple of thousand. And I don't have a computer, I don't tweet or any of those new things.
True Luddite.
I am. And you know, and I took a course twice at NUI in Galway, computers, and I flunked both times. But they gave me an honorary degree and hoped that I'd leave the country, which I did. Anyway, yeah, I do love Ireland. My mother was from Borrisokane, County Tipperary, and I'm an Irish citizen, as is himself. My father, of course, was Spanish. Yeah, I embrace Ireland. I call it the Holy Land. I tell people I'm going to the Holy Land. They know I'm going to Ireland. And I spent a lot of time there and love the country and the people and the culture. And so I didn't think this was a serious thing. And Emilio got a message from the fellow that was organizing this thing, I guess, and relayed it to me. And I responded, which you sent back, and I understand it's okay now. I'm off the hook. What happened was I was supporting Michael O'Higgins, who is a friend of mine there, and I thought a very worthy candidate. I said that there's only been 2 presidents in Ireland's history. Both of them are women. It was Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese. Incidentally, Mary McAleese sent us a longhand written note just a few weeks ago saying she saw the film, and thanks a lot. Her daughter is leaving for the Camino as she's writing. You know, Mary McAleese is one of the heroes of the Good Friday Accord. She was a Catholic living in Northern Ireland. You may know the story. Her house was bombed by the Ulster faction, and she's nonviolent, and she supported the Good Friday Accord, and along with John Hume and George Mitchell, senator from the United States, pushed through the Good Friday Accord. She's a bona fide hero. And her predecessor, Mary Robinson, as you know, is a human rights activist, and put that office, the President of Ireland, on the map. It's a 7-year term. Both women have won it twice, so it's 14 years apiece, so it's 28 years. And I said in my message that the bar has been set so high by these 2 dames that I could never possibly hope to go higher. I said, please let me off the hook and vote for Michael O'Higgins. And that's the way I left it, and they bought that. Since then, I understand that Marty McGuinness has jumped in the race just this past weekend, if you know who he is, the political arm of the IRA, or Sinn Féin. So that's going to make a big difference. So there you have it. Now the other question about having the 100 and how many?
132,000.
132,000 alumni. How do we get them to see the movie? It's up to...
No, I think I'd like to introduce and turn that question over to our producer, David Alexanian. But you don't have a mic.
I don't know. No, I think maybe you can hear me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can give as complete an answer as Martin just gave for his half, but I will say this.
Mercifully.
Just quickly, Emilio mentioned that we're on this American pilgrimage. Some of you have seen the bus. We're trying to go to a number of cities, and thank you guys, most importantly, for coming today. because as Emilio, Martin, and I, and everybody else involved with this film, we didn't make this film for New York and Hollywood in that sort of typical way. We made this film for America. So we're happy to be here. And to that question, the word of mouth is really the only chance that we're going to really be able to get this film to the people. And as Martin likes to say, we don't have a $50 million marketing campaign, but we do have a $50,000 bus. So on this bus and in screenings like this, and with the power of Twitter and emailing and newsletters, etc., I think we have a chance. So we'd like to spread the word, and we'd like to help in whatever way we can that you think makes us, a bit more accessible to those alums. Because what happens with films like this typically is you're in a couple of theaters on the coast, and then people say, "Wow, I missed it." So we're going to release the film October 7th in a number of markets, and then October 14th we go a little bit broader, and then hopefully October 21st we'll be in many theaters. So I think between now and then, if we can, liaise in some way and get the word out, we'd obviously appreciate that, and we hope you guys enjoyed the film.
Yes.
All of the characters were beautiful in the film, and I was just curious, Emilio, what inspired you to create the Canadian woman?
I was in the middle of writing the screenplay when David introduced me to Deborah Cara. She, I thought, was a very interesting actress. Is known sort of in the independent film world, but a really wonderful talent. And so I began to write the role for her as I was going along. And she's just a lovely voice in the film. I'm very, very proud of her work.
Yes.
Which,
no.
Right here?
No.
Yes,
Right here.
I'm really curious about how the gypsy scene came about. It felt like it wasn't there maybe originally, but something happened and you worked it in, or was that pre-planned?
The question was about the gypsy scene. And was that pre-planned, or was that something that happened along the way? When I say that this movie was and is a collaboration from the beginning, it's absolute truth. When I began to write the screenplay, it was a series of conversations that came out of the conversations I had with Martin. So he would say things like, "I got this great idea, and I think that at a certain point the bag should fall off and go into a river, and I jump in and I swim after it, and I heroically, oh, wonderful, you write that." And I would. And then a week later, because again, I mentioned I live right down the street, knock, 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 knock. I got another idea. He says, I get into Burgos, and I put the bag down, and a gypsy boy takes the bag, and he runs through the street, and I run after him, and it's very dramatic, and I chase him, and the boy gets away with the bag. And I'm just looking at him, and I say, wait a minute. Now at 70 years old, you want to be an action star? But, yeah, again, great ideas. They're both in the movie, but I had to figure out how to organically incorporate them into the body of the piece.
But we wanted to deal with prejudice. And there is no single group in Europe, all of Europe, which you see in the picture, that is more prejudiced against than the Gitano community, as they're called in Spain, or the Gypsies, or the Romas. And you only have to look at the just recent history in Italy, particularly when Berlusconi gave, I think, $80 to each one he could find and shipped them out on a plane back to Romania. Most of them didn't even come from Romania. But they're, politicians, I'd call him loosely a politician. Certainly I wouldn't call him a leader at any rate, but Berlusconi was using them politically to step up. It's all their fault. Just like in our country, it's so easy now to blame the Hispanic community for all the problems we got crossing the borders, And where we come from in the West Coast, the La Raza is very fond of saying, we didn't cross the border crossed us. So that's the truth of the matter. So we wanted to deal with prejudice. And there's no bigger, as I say, group that is more singularly targeted than the Gypsies in all of Western Europe.
It was very well done, by the way.
Thank you.
I would just like to deflect the question to you, Mr. Sheen. How did you feel being directed by your son, taking orders from your son?
It doesn't get any better than this guy, frankly. This is the third picture we've done together where he directed me, and we played together. We did a film that he directed a few years ago called The War at Home, and we played father and son. Then in Bobby, I was still doing The West Wing, and he had a much larger part for me, but as it was more and more difficult for me to get away from The West Wing to shoot on the side, it got diminished, but nonetheless I was so happy that he kept me in that one. And then he wrote this one for me, and I haven't had this good a part. I can't even remember how long, and I'm just delighted and deeply grateful to him. And if I haven't mentioned that, I should. Thank you so much. Good part.
One more question. Student. Student.
Hi, me?
Are you a student?
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. This is wonderful. I guess my question goes back to a couple things that we touched on earlier, and even to the first question. But when you're making, I guess on the creative end, but also in the performance, when you're trying to get religious discourse out in a piece like this, without making it preachy, without making it so obvious that it's just not art, you know, how do you negotiate that? And I'll leave it kind of open like that.
Well, it's difficult to do a movie about the Camino and not be exploring a spiritual journey. While we were shooting, we met agnostics, atheists, spiritual people, very deeply religious people, and or people who were just simply out there for sport. What I wanted to do is really strike a balance in the making of this. That the film would appeal to Catholics, to Christians, to Jewish people, to Muslims, to literally every area of the population. That this film would never be preachy. And it's one of the things, as we were putting the film together, Martin said, well, let's stop at this church and I'll fall to my knees and weep, and let's stop at this church and I'll fall to my knees and weep. And my mother said, if you go to Spain and you make that film, I will never talk to both of you. Find balance. Find balance. And that was and don't let him weep. So again, it was trying to always go for that balance, and I think we really strike that chord with the film. I don't people, non-believers who have seen it said thank you, and deeply religious, deeply spiritual people have also said thank you. So I think we've covered ourselves in many ways.
Well, Martin and Emilio.
These are little brochures we had made up of snapshots along the way of actually making the film, and I'm selling them for $2 a piece. These are for the students. I've signed all of these, and no extra charge. And I want to thank the Notre Dame community. As always, you're so hospitable and warm, and above all, you are enviable, joyous, and I'm just overwhelmed with that. And just one more thing, speaking of alumni, a guy I've come to adopt as my brother, and I adore him, is here. Joe Cosgrove's a triple domer. He was also your man, the Leprechaun for 2 years during the Rudy period, and Dan Devine. Joe is here. He was my attorney for 20-some-odd years. He threw me over for a judgeship, can you believe it, in Pennsylvania. Joe is there. Joe is an example of your community, and I adore him, and he continues to remind me that I'm just as good as an alumni, even though it's only fantasy. And his lovely wife Sharon is here as well. So Sharon, we have to clear and make room for a new group, and we get to welcome them. But unfortunately, we're rolling on the bus right afterwards, and so we won't have a chance for a Q&A after that. But you were lucky enough to get one.